All right, so yeah, I'm a filmmaker and an adventurer, I guess, and I'm here today to talk about a journey I did this past summer with my friend Todd, who's in the audience here somewhere, along the Enbridge Northern Gateway pipeline. There's our route from Fort McMurray down to Bruderheim across to Kitimat, and if you don't know, the Northern Gateway it's a 1,200-kilometer proposed pipeline project that would bring tar sands bitumen from northern Alberta to the BC coast, and then tankers would deliver it across to Asian markets. And so when I do my films, I like to do it from a different perspective. It's a self-propelled journey we did along it. We biked, we hiked, and we paddled the entire GPS track of the Enbridge pipeline route in order to get kind of a ground-level, intimate perspective of the pipeline from the view of people who actually live along the route. So we started up in the tar sands, a little bike tour up there. I didn't see any other cyclists there, surprisingly, actually. It's not exactly the south of France wine country. But what you probably know about the tar sands is it's the largest industrial project in the history of our planet. And it's currently the fastest growing source of CO2 emissions in Canada. It takes about 3 times more CO2 to get a barrel of tar sands crude out of the ground than conventional oil extraction methods. I think it's like 4 barrels of natural gas and 10 barrels of water get you 1 barrel of tar sands crude. And how this connects to Northern Gateway is that if that project goes through, the tar sands would actually expand by 50% in terms of production, which is massive as far as global CO2 emissions go. So 450 kilometers on south of the tar sands, we come to the industrial heartland of Alberta. And this is an area that used to be former pasture land, farmland, that has now been completely rezoned by the Alberta government for industrial use. It's mostly oil refineries. And this is where Northern Gateway would also begin. But we were there to talk to the people. You can't see it, but this is Kai. He's our neighbor at the Starlight Motel in Grand Prairie, Alberta. This is about 1,000 kilometers into the journey now, and Kai's pushing away a bike there. We actually gave Kai our bikes. I bought 2 bikes for $70 off Craigslist in Vancouver before the journey started, and they got us out to Grand Prairie. So kind of reduce, reuse, recycle, pass it on to Kai, our neighbor. And Kai also happens to be an environmental scientist. So what he does is he cleans up oil spills. So he told us the whole process of how it works, like spills from pipelines. So if a pipeline ruptures and it goes onto the ground, the oil, they can kind of measure out to the edge, sample it, isolate it, they dig it up, and they put it in the landfill. But if a pipeline goes into a river, which relates to Northern Gateway, he said, like, the oil is lost. And I said, what do you mean lost? He said, well, by the time we get there, you know, the river transports the oil downstream. It sinks into the riverbed, into every nook and cranny of the river. By the time they get there, the oil is gone. It's lost. They can usually put booms out, get a small percentage off the surface, but that's about all they can do. 5 days later, this happened in Michigan. This is the Kalamazoo River, and 3 million liters of oil spilled from an Enbridge pipeline into the Kalamazoo River. If you extend that to what's happening in British Columbia, this pipeline would cross 773 watercourses in BC across far more technical terrain. And 5 days actually before this happened, the US government was quite concerned about the security of oil in terms of spills because of what was happening in the Gulf. And Enbridge had given them their rock-solid guarantee that all their pipelines in the States were secure and safe. And then this happened 5 days later. So actions are much louder than words. Also, Enbridge, in terms of the day after the pipeline spill, the American EPA actually rejected their initial cleanup proposal. But that would have been moot anyways because, as Kai said, the oil, once it's in the river, is lost. But often, this is Dieter. You can't really see him, but he's the main cab driver in Grand Prairie as well. Usually, if you're going into a town, you want to get some information about the town. You want to know where the best restaurant is, know where you can shake your booty at night. You talk to Dieter. He also knows about pipelines and what happens with them in the community. There's pipelines everywhere in Grand Prairie, crisscrossing the community. This is oil and gas country. And he said, well, there are no jobs to do with pipelines. Pipelines are very specialized work. When a pipeline gets put in, basically it's a crew usually from Fort McMurray or Edmonton or Calgary. They come in, they have a work camp, they put the pipeline in the ground, they bury it, and then they're gone. There are no jobs. And after that, the pipeline, once it's in the ground, actually gets monitored electronically from places in Calgary, Vancouver, and so on and so forth. So if you extend that to British Columbia, all we're getting is one long pipeline through our province. So once it's in the ground, there won't be any ongoing jobs and that sort of thing, as Enbridge would have you believe. Basically, the only permanent jobs will be 37 in the terminal in Kitimat. This is what BC is all about. Alberta's oil and gas country, and BC is clean water, clean air, and fish country. This is the Murray River. We're crossing on our way, so we now have transferred to our feet. We're doing about a 350K hike to get over the Rockies at this point. And this is one of the 773 watercourses that the pipeline would be crossing. And this is the entrance to the Rocky Mountains. And this is an absolutely magical place here. This is perhaps, I've been to a lot of nice places in the world, but this is probably the most pristine ecosystem I've ever been in. And this is where Enbridge wants to put the pipeline through. Not many people know about this part of the pipeline proposal. Absolutely intact. It's more intact than any park because there aren't even human trails in there. There's animal trails. There's the grizzlies and the moose make these animal trails that we followed here and there. We saw grizzly, we saw moose. Wolves howling in the morning woke us up. So an absolutely spectacular place. Ferns over your head, spruce like a meter thick at 4,000 feet, kind of like Jurassic Park or the Lost World, just spectacular. So even if there isn't a pipeline spill from the pipeline going through that, the construction of it itself would be just devastating. And places like this are very rare on this planet. They're shrinking. There's not many absolutely intact ecosystems left, so it's one of those things that definitely should be protected. And this is Todd. This is the Kitimat River. We're now on the coast, and this is a little pack raft he's in. It's actually a small raft you can put on the back of your pack and carry it and inflate it when you need it. The Kitimat River is the last vein of water going from the coast mountains to Douglas Channel, where the tankers would go from. And they would actually have to tunnel a 13-kilometer long tunnel through the coast mountains to get to the Kitimat River and then run the pipeline all the way along this river right beside it. And so along the river we met up with Donnie here. He's one of the fish guides, part of a current $140 million wild salmon economy existing in northern BC. About 50,000 people are currently employed in jobs on the ocean and on the interior waterways to do with fishing, fisheries, guiding, that sort of thing. And Donnie, his fear was that Enbridge is taking jobs, not making jobs. One spill on that pipeline would basically take away the food from his family's table. Enbridge has had 713 spills in the past decade on their pipeline, so something will happen if this pipeline goes through. So our last leg was a 110-kilometer long sea kayak paddle out Douglas Channel, where the tankers would be plying their trade back and forth. Douglas Channel is, if it goes ahead, would be the narrowest, most technical kind of passage for tankers in the world to go through. These are super tankers. They're bigger than the Empire State Building in terms of length. And this is one of the roughest places in the world in terms of ocean. The second highest wave in recorded history has been recorded just out of the mouth of Douglas Channel in the Hecate Strait, over 100 feet. They've had sustained wave heights of 70 feet for 6 hours they've measured. This kind of thing would scuttle a super tanker. And if there is a spill on the ocean here, it's going to devastate all the communities along the coast. And First Nations are going to be the first to feel it. This is Wally from the Gitgat First Nation. And he lives right in Hartley Bay, which is where we finished our journey. And we went out with Wally fishing, and he's a halibut fisherman. And so every morning at 6 a.m., he'll go out, he'll lay out 2,000 feet of line with hooks, and then he'll go out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and just painstakingly, hand over hand, drag this line in. And he pull up these 50-pound and 100-pound halibut. And he doesn't sell them. He actually feeds 12 families in Hartley Bay with this food. It's a sustainable food fishery. It's what his people have been doing for 10,000 years. And it's what the First Nations people all along the entire pipeline have been doing in terms of land. They're very connected to the land. It's part of their cultural identity. So a spill on the rivers or on the ocean would be a cultural genocide. These villages would become ghost towns. That's what happened with the Exxon Valdez when the spill happened up there. So the same thing would happen with BC. Wally was saying he envisions if there's a spill, he'd basically be, they'd have to move, and he'd be in a small apartment somewhere in Vancouver eating hot dogs instead of eating halibut. So from all angles, no matter which way you look at this pipeline, it's definitely an example of the old energy and what's so important in terms of us getting new energy online. Any angle you look at it culturally, you look at it environmentally, you look at it from an economic standpoint. This pipeline doesn't make sense, and for BC especially, it's all risk and no reward. Thank you.